They stood in my chamber, their fingers aimed at me like those of executioners. The crimson and azure glow of police lights bled through the window blinds, casting a stark, unsettling light upon the walls. The small packet on my desk was not my own. Yet my sister Emily's smirk conveyed the utter irrelevance of that fact. "You were perpetually the source of the problem," she whispered. And my parents, my own blood, nodded in agreement. "Simply accept the culpability," my mother stated, her voice devoid of warmth. "You will only exacerbate the situation if you resist," my father appended. The profound treachery struck with a force far greater than the glinting restraints that tightened around my wrists. I was raised with the conviction that family was an impenetrable fortress. My sister Emily was the confidant with whom I once shared secrets beneath blanket forts. My parents had assured me we would always be a bulwark for one another. That illusion had fractured years prior, small fissures I had chosen to overlook. Her deceptions, their undeniable favoritism, the way my anguish never seemed to be acknowledged. But this evening was not a mere fracture. It was the unequivocal collapse. The officers interrogated me, their suspicion palpable. But I did not raise my voice. I did not plead. I understood that panic would only fuel their prejudice. Instead, I requested a single necessity, my legal counsel. For several months prior, I had been in a state of preparation. Emily believed her actions were cunning as she crept into my room, leaving behind subtle traces of sabotage, a misplaced wallet, a deleted electronic message. But I had observed the patterns, the distinct hallmarks of her malevolence. Rather than confront her, I adapted. I installed discreet cameras in my room, silent, unblinking witnesses she never suspected. Thus, when the packet of illicit substances materialized on my desk, I was already cognizant of the inevitable outcome. My legal counsel arrived, composed and meticulous, and I passed him the encrypted drive. He waited until my parents were leaning against the wall, exhibiting a smug self-assurance. Then he initiated the playback, the screen illuminated with footage of Emily entering my room, retrieving the drugs from her purse, placing them neatly beneath my notebooks, her subsequent laughter, and her hushed rehearsals. He will be unable to extricate himself from this predicament. And then, my mother's voice, captured off camera. "You would be wise to ensure this remains a permanent outcome." My father's grunt of assent. A profound stillness fell over the room. I witnessed the pallor that first drained from my mother's face. Her lips quivered, but no words were uttered. My father's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. He said nothing. And Emily. She froze, a look of sheer horror blossoming in her eyes as the edifice of her deception collapsed. One of the officers leaned in, his tone sharp as a razor. "Would you care to offer an explanation for this?" No one spoke. For once, their silence served as my protection rather than my condemnation. But my work was not complete. Vengeance without permanence is merely a fleeting reprieve. I pressed charges, not with a public display, but with quiet, deliberate signatures on documentation. That guaranteed the consequences could not be dismissed. Emily was taken into custody for possession and filing a false report. My parents were implicated as accessories. They had not anticipated my resolve to follow through. They believed my loyalty was a chain, that I would fracture and beg for their forgiveness. Instead, I gave law enforcement every piece of evidence, the recordings, the complete history, even the old marks on my body that corresponded with the Fossards. They had told their neighbors. The truth became a blade, and I ensured its cut was profound. The court proceedings were clinical, yet utterly devastating. I did not need to raise my voice. The evidence was a testament more powerful than any rage could ever be. I observed as Emily's legal counsel struggled, as my mother wept on the witness stand, and as my father sat rigid, his authority completely stripped away. They attempted to contort the narrative, to portray me as the vindictive one. But every attempt unraveled against the cold, incontrovertible footage. I did not smile when the verdicts were delivered. There was no need. Their downfall was not a public spectacle. It was a return to equilibrium. Months later, I returned to my former dwelling, not entering it, but simply standing on the pavement across the street. The curtains were perpetually drawn now. The lawn, once meticulously maintained, was overgrown. A for sale sign sagged near the porch. That fortress I once believed I had grown up in was now hollowed out, exposed. I felt no sorrow. I felt release. People inquire if the act was worthwhile, if the destruction of my own family left me hollowed. Herein lies the truth. They orchestrated their own destruction. The moment they selected Fossids over me, I merely removed their masks. Emily forfeited her liberty. My parents' reputations were ruined. And I gained clarity. I learned that blood is not thicker than betrayal. That silence is a formidable weapon if you possess the skill to wield it. And that sometimes justice is not about forgiveness, but about compelling them to plead in the very same way they once demanded my submission. Thus, when my legal counsel initiated the playback and the truth painted them as culpable, that was the precise moment I achieved my freedom. And freedom, unlike family, never betrays.